and welcome to Momma Myung's Kitchen. I'm Myung Kim. Thank you for joining me. In this episode, I would like to celebrate summer and all the wonderful produce that is being locally grown right here in New Jersey. With fruits and vegetables bursting forth at farmers markets and from home gardens, it is a perfect time to feature these fresh ingredients for a true farm-to-table experience. With the recent proliferation of home gardeners growing their own vegetables, I thought it would be a great time to check out my friends' gardens to see what they are growing. My first stop is to my friend Jill's garden, which she shares and tends with two of her neighbors. This is a newly cultivated garden in a sun-drenched field, motivated perhaps by the lockdown and isolation imposed by the coronavirus. While touring through their garden, I am envious of this oasis and excited about all the vegetables they've planted and the promise of the crops they will yield. These patches are filled with tomato, pepper, eggplant, scallion, cucumber, and zucchini plants, to name just a few. As we root about under the large leaf vines, we spy several cucumbers that are the perfect size for picking. Add to that a large zucchini, some scallions,
that's massive,
and a beautiful yellow squash.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
In my greed for more farm-to-table ingredients, I move on to my friend Nick's garden. His is a more established garden that has been cultivated in a tighter, more challenging environment. It is designed to maximize the available sunlight within the borders of this heavily wooded property. A veteran home gardener of 10 years, Nick is eager to share the joys of suburban farming and guides me through the myriad of vegetables that are growing in his plot. These include string beans, squash, turnips, tomatoes, lettuce, multicolored onions and carrots, and of course, zucchini. It is clear the pleasure Nick derives from walking through his garden and feeling the soil yield as he tugs the vegetables from the ground.
Wow, look at that. That's pretty good. Yum, yum.
All right.
That guy's very solid.
And with pleasure, I join in the fun.
Whoa, that's a big one.
That's a good size, baby.
With a bounty of vegetables laid before me, I begin to consider the possibilities for their use in my kitchen.
The size of that.
Here are all the wonderful vegetables that have recently been plucked from the ground. I'm going to make two dishes. One is with cucumbers and with turnips, and the other will be a medley of vegetables. Now, this is going to be an experiment because I've never worked with some of these vegetables before, or have I used them in this kind of combination. So it's going to be a whole new adventure for all of us, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be making these two dishes using classic Korean ingredients. Of course, we always use soy sauce, sesame oil, salt, black pepper, sugar, garlic, and I would say that scallions are perhaps the most prevalent ingredient in any Korean dish. So of course we're going to be using that. In addition, we have crushed sesame seeds, gochujang, which is a iconic Korean pepper paste, and gochugaru, which is a powdered chili. For the cold dish, I've skinned the cucumber and the radishes. And I'm going to first take off the ends and quarter the cucumber, cut it into small cubes. Oops, a little imperfection in there. And this is a very, very tough vegetable. I'm going to cut it small. I'm going to give it a taste. interesting flavor. Not sweet, it's a little bitter and spicy. So I'm going to take 1 scallion for this little bowl with 1 cucumber and some of the radish and cut it up fine. So I'm going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt, a ½ teaspoon of sugar, and maybe just a little bit more. A teaspoon of the gochujang, a heaping teaspoon. And one more ingredient that I forgot to mention is vinegar. Add a tablespoon of vinegar, and again, just a splash, maybe 1½ tablespoons in fact. So we want to modify these measurements as we go along because you don't really know sometimes based on the quantity that you have to work with. So we have to adapt as we go along. Then we'll add a teaspoon of sesame oil and another splash, so probably 1½ teaspoons. The last thing to go in are the sesame seeds, maybe a teaspoon or more. Yes, again, 1½. I think we should make all of these 1½ teaspoons. And stir it up. Okay, and let's give it a try. Could use a little bit more sugar. So I'm going to add another teaspoon and just a little bit more salt. There we go, and that should do the trick. And this time I'm going to try the turnip. That's a very different flavor, one that I've never tried before, and that's what cooking is all about. If you want to become a better cook, you need to learn how to improvise with new ingredients, as well as learning how to use proportions that suit your palate. And sometimes you need a little more, sometimes a little less. It's not a universal measurement, so this is how you get to the right flavors that you're looking for. I've got 3 kinds of onions here, a red, white, and yellow. And I'm not going to need all of them. That's going to be a little too much of the flavor of the onions. So I think I'll start by cutting the bigger ones in half and then use the entire small yellow onion. So let's begin by cutting this in half. And red onions tend to be very, very spicy, very strong. So I'm not going to use quite as much. The white onion, I'm just going to cut across like that. It's crescent shape. Same with this. And with the red, I think I'm going to make it a little bit finer because it's a powerful flavor, and I don't want to have a big mouthful of red onion. So we're going to put that in one bowl, and then we have 3 carrots also with 3 different colors. The orange, red, and white. And I've never tasted a red or a white carrot before. Wow, the inside though is orange. Isn't that interesting? This is a whole new discovery. And the white is white inside, and the orange is a pale orange. All right, so let's try and figure out what shape we want it. Maybe with the red carrot, we'll do a julienne. And the little orange one is actually kind of green. on the inside, maybe because it's still very young. Wow, this white one is really hard. I can't cut through it. Oh my gosh. I'm not even sure why, but this is a root that is hardened and definitely not edible. So we're going to discard this white carrot. So let's put this in a small bowl. And the next thing that we're going to cut is the zucchini and the yellow squash. This is a really big, fat zucchini. So we're going to have to make it into smaller pieces, and I think I'll do that by doing a julienne cut with it. Oftentimes I use zucchini all by itself and use much of the ingredients that I'm going to be using for this medley of vegetables. And that is why these seasonings are so valuable and universal, in that you can apply it to almost any vegetable that you stir fry. And so if you only have one of these ingredients or a couple of these ingredients, it will work perfectly well with these classic Korean ingredients. So I think half of the zucchini, because it was so large, I'm only going to use what I've cut up, and I'm going to save the rest for another time. Throw that in there, and then I'll be chopping up the yellow squash. And this, we're going to play with it. It adds a very pretty color. So let's try doing a crescent. And the rest of it, again, it is a little bit fat. So let's see what we can do with this. Maybe we'll just cut it into slices. And again, I'm going to save the other half for another time. And here we have this beautiful combination of colors: green, yellow, white, red, orange, and one other ingredient that we're going to chop up is a great big scallion from Jill's garden. That big scallion was probably a little too big, so I'm going to take probably 2/3 of it, and again save the rest for another meal. Okay, and one more ingredient, and that's the garlic. I have here 3 large cloves of garlic. I'm going to chop it up, and again, I'm not really sure just how much is exactly the right amount, so we're going to cut it up, and as we start cooking and we sprinkle it in, we can get a sense of whether we have the right amount or not. I now have all the fresh ingredients prepared to begin sauteing them in a pan. Okay, let's begin by turning the burner on to high, and as I do that, I'm going to pour in a little bit of peanut oil, which I like to cook with. Probably better than olive oil, although you could use olive oil if that's what you have. Okay, again, we don't want to use too much oil, and I use a non-stick pan because you don't have to use as much oil and your food doesn't get saturated with fat. We're going to let that sit for maybe 2 minutes and let it get really, really hot. So the first thing that I'm going to add are the onions, because they take the longest to cook. So let's toss that in the pan. So you know it's ready because, as you can hear, the vegetables are sizzling away. And I'm going to turn it down just a bit. I'm going to turn it down to medium-high and let that cook and soften a bit. As the onions get a little bit wilted, I'm going to add the carrots because they are going to take a while as well, because the carrots are firm and they're going to take a little bit of time to cook. So let's stir that around. So I think at this point I'm going to add the garlic. So let's use, I think, probably all of it. As you know, Koreans love garlic. So garlic and scallions combined, it makes the most wonderful flavor. And you'll find it in almost all of Korean cuisine. Look how beautiful that is. I turned the heat back up almost to high and let it continue to saute until the carrots start to soften. And they've been cooking probably for about 8 minutes. And now I'm going to add the zucchini and the squash. And at this point, I'm going to add the sesame oil. So just drizzle it on to cover the top. And that's going to add this really toasty sesame flavor. Once the zucchini and the squash become soft and wilted, I'm going to add the soy sauce. And you're going to hear it sizzle. Turn it up. So that's probably about 2 tablespoons. And then we'll add some black pepper. Again, a dash. Probably, less than a 1/4 teaspoon. Maybe about a spoonful of sugar. And then the last thing, again, is the sesame seeds. One more thing, if you want it a little bit spicy, I'm going to add the gochugaru, the chili powder. You sprinkle it on. If you want it spicier, of course you add more, and less spicy, you just sprinkle on as much or as little as you'd like. We stir it around a couple of times, and it's ready to be served. And here it is, our medley of vegetables made possible by the generous donations made by Jill and Nick. We're going to enjoy this later on with our barbecued short ribs and rice.
Oh, that looks good.
Doesn't it?
It's nice to be eating outside by your garden. Lots of flowers. Everything really looks delicious. It's quite an interesting mix of vegetables.
Right, we've never tried this combination before, so it's going to be an interesting meal.
Cold and hot.
Yep, here are the cucumbers we made earlier in the day.
And here you've got them with radish.
Yes. Okay, and if you want to take some of that vegetable medley.
Wow.
Oh, that looks really, really delicious and
Yes.
colorful. Look at this. Wow, what a beautiful plate that makes.
I'm ready to give it a try.
Okay. How's it taste?
Really good. Yeah, it has the flavor that I'm used to when you make the zucchini, but with all these additional vegetables, it's quite a treat.
All together, but it's enhanced, right, by all the Korean ingredients.
Here's to all your good work in preparing this, and we'll toast Jill and Nick. Thank you.
Here's to Jill and Nick. Boy, this is really quite a treat. I'm going to give it a try. I think I have 2 new dishes here. But it really is about what's available right now. And when you talk about farm to table, that's what it's all about.